Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm going to be reacting to more of your unpopular Call of Duty Zombies opinions. I asked a few weeks ago what you guys have to say, and you guys gave some really interesting hot takes, so let's get right into it. The first one here is coming from Gucci Marcus, and they say, the IW Zombies storyline deserves more recognition, creative and funny, and a complete contrast to the serious Treyarch storyline. Would have been really solid to see an IW2 with a storyline continuation to rival Treyarch. I definitely do agree. Not that I think the storyline was that interesting on its own. Obviously, I think the Ether story is 10 times better, but just having something that's, less serious and something that's more goofy as a storyline actually works really well, and it makes it so each year we got something a bit more fresh. I think IW itself was a very fresh experience after Black Ops 3 Zombies. Just having a storyline where you really didn't have to follow it too much to understand what was going on. It was a very simple story. There was some depth to it here or there, but for the most part, it was just meant to be a very goofy story, and I think that is a great contrast to Treyarch. And yes, of course, seeing a continuation of the storyline would be amazing. Not even just for the story itself, but just for the way that game works. The fact that each map took place in a specific Willard Wyler movie and allowed for each map to have really diverse locations and themes. I would love to see that again. Here's another Infinite Warfare hot take coming from Matsuki, and he says, IW Zombies deserves a sequel, and I doubt it would be that hard to make, even without the head Zombies leader during that time. Yes, Lee Ross. He did some amazing work, but it is groundwork that could be replicated. The story isn't that deep, at least in the cutscenes. It's Scooby-Doo-ish. Spaceland was pretty much the only map in IW that had minigames, rides, and a Dead Ups Arcade theme around the map. As a result, Spaceland was the most memorable map in the game, so I think they try to capture the same energy in a sequel. Director's Cut is a fantastic reward. They could do it again. Both the in-game currency bonus, the skins, and the camo. The boss fight game mode was a hit idea. They're very underrated and encourage the devs to make them worth your time. If I can point out just these highlights of IW Zombies, I'm sure they can make a banger sequel themselves, even with new leadership. Like I said before, I agree. I think this definitely should get a continuation. Will they ever do it? Probably not. I think anything regarding Infinite Warfare is probably never going to return because it was the most hated Call of Duty of all time, especially after all those dislikes on the campaign trailer, even on the multiplayer and Zombies trailer. Even both those trailers had a lot of dislikes. People were just not having it, and even though a lot of people can appreciate IW today, I just don't think they did enough back then for Activision to ever take that chance again. So we probably won't see something like Infinite Warfare again. I think maybe they'll do something, a bit less serious in the future. Maybe we'll have a game that's a bit goofier. I really hope so. But when it comes to the, tone of IW Zombies, I think it's very unlikely. But like I said, I'm going to be shouting to the rooftops every single year that we should get a continuation like this. I would much prefer this over something like Modern Warfare Zombies. For example, in the next Modern Warfare game, I think that would be the perfect time to do it. Just do this instead. Like, you don't have to have Infinite Warfare 2 for them to continue this sort of, style of zombies. They can easily just do it in any game, and that could be in Modern Warfare 4. But like I said, chances are it's probably not going to end up like that. Next up, we got a hot take coming from CJ Santa, and this man is known for his hot takes. If you haven't seen his videos, go check him out. He says Shi No Numa Reborn is the best version of the map, with a main Easter egg, multiple side quests, as well as a quest to build the Wonder Waffle, which incorporates using the boss. Not to mention each hut where you buy your perks have quest items with how the perks can be rebought to level 4. It encourages the player to go back to each hut to upgrade them, making sure there's more movement for the player. I agree 100%. I think this is easily the best version of Shi No Numa. I think most people who don't give it credit probably haven't tried it or just shot down the game immediately because it's part of Vanguard, obviously. I understand, Durand Falling and Terra Maldicta were terrible, awful, but when they released Shi No Numa Reborn, I genuinely felt like it was a decent map. It's not great, it's not amazing or anything like that, but it's much more replayable than any other version of Shi No Numa, 100%. So I definitely recommend, if you have Vanguard and you haven't tried out Shi No Numa, just try it out. You might enjoy yourself for a little bit. Do the Easter egg. It's not the worst time in the world. I personally had fun doing it, so yeah, I definitely agree with this take. Next take is coming from Davin Lefs. Sometimes simple maps are better than overly advanced maps. Personally, I think Town is a top 5 Zombies map. It's simply just a hop in and have fun map. Hopping in a town game with friends is sometimes one of the most fun experiences Zombies has to offer, and I think that's something Zombies has sort of missed at recently. There was no more simple maps where you just hop in and survive. The last one we got was arguably the Giant for BO3. I think we need to return to having more than one simple map per game. Having a couple like BO2 is my biggest dream for the next Zombies game. Not that complicated maps are bad, in fact Shadows of Evil is my favorite map of all time, but sometimes I would just hop on the Giant for some easy and simple zombie killing, and I feel like that has gone very underappreciated in the zombies scene as of late. So I agree and disagree at the same time, and let's talk about this. So obviously there are some solid simple maps out there. Obviously I think there's plenty of simple maps that are fun to play. Obviously, if you play them too much, you're going to get bored of them a lot quicker than you would a more advanced or a more complex map. What I disagree with here is the idea that there's really no more simple maps that you can just hop in and survive, and then he says the last one we got was arguably the Giant for BO3. I disagree there. I think the thing is, when people see complexity and simplicity in zombies, they immediately see the inclusion of an Easter egg and immediately say, oh my god, this map's really complex. But if you really think about it, most maps since the Giant, you could just hop in and kill zombies and not worry about anything else. Like, obviously, yes, okay, you still have to do something to open up Pack-a-Punch, but on a lot of the maps, it doesn't take that long. I mean, even look at Cold War. I think Cold War is a great example. Literally every Cold War map, it takes like 5 minutes to unlock Pack-a-Punch. So I feel like it's not that difficult to just hop in, for example, Die Maschine, and just kill zombies, and that's it. You don't have to do the Easter eggs, you don't have to worry about anything. You could literally just hop in just to kill zombies, and it'll probably take you just as long as it would take you to turn on Pack-a-Punch on the Giant as you probably would on a map like Die Maschine. The same can go for, honestly, a lot of other maps. Even 9, it's pretty fast to get Pack-a-Punch on the Black Ops 4 map. 9, you go to Classified, I feel like that didn't take too long. The Reisendrach wasn't that long. I know if you want to get the bows, you're going to have to do some work, but in general, like getting Pack-a-Punch, it's pressing 2 buttons. I'd even argue Revelations is probably one of the most simplistic maps ever, because when you actually just look at it, all the wonder weapons are in the box, and turning on Pack-a-Punch is simply just 4 buttons around the map. I guess it's a little lockdown you have to do for each of those buttons, but it's pretty simple when you really think about it. So I personally disagree there, but I do understand the sentiment of wanting survival maps, and I have no problem with that. My issue would only be is if those survival maps took away from other maps in the game. We saw that happen with COD World War II Zombies, where they had a whole DLC centered around 3 survival maps. That was, of course, with the Tortured Path, and of course, those survival maps also had the Tortured Path game mode alongside it. And I didn't have an issue with those maps existing. My issue was the fact that it replaced a brand new map, and I felt like that it didn't really have the same level of replayability as a brand new complex map probably would. So my idea to just, fulfill everyone's needs is simply just do what Black Ops 2 did and do that for every single map going forward. I think they should make a system where every single map has at least one survival map cut out of it. So think of a map like Shadows of Evil, which honestly, I always thought this should have been the case even back when Black Ops 3 first released. I always questioned why this wasn't the case. They should have taken each individual district from Shadows of Evil and turned it into a separate survival map. So you could have had 3 different maps made out of that: the Canal District, the Footlight District, and the Waterfront District. Those should have all been separate survival maps where the perks were rearranged there, Pack-a-Punch machine, a box, and it would have just allowed people to just hop in and just play a survival map and have fun like that. If they really don't enjoy the idea of there being like any sort of Pack-a-Punch quest or any sort of Easter egg, like any of that on their map, and then I get it. Like, if you wanted to play that separate map, go for it. But at the same time, I do think a lot of the maps today are still playable in that way where you can just hop in and play. But at the same time, I get what he's saying, and I do hope that Black Ops 6 can find the best of both worlds. Speaking of the best of both worlds, we have a take here from It Too Spooky For Me 79, and they say, I think Zombies needs more variety. Appease both groups of players. We need round-based, Outbreak, and other game modes in the mix. Cold War had the idea, it just waited too long for new maps, and Outbreak wasn't really fleshed out enough, but in the end, we had round-based Outbreak, Onslaught, Dead Ops. We also had game modes for round-based Outbreak, Onslaught, and Dead Ops. So this is one I kind of agree and disagree with as well. Like, on one hand, obviously variety is good. I've been talking about map variety all the time. I think map variety is huge. But when it comes to game modes, fundamentally, when you have modes that are so different from each other, it's bound that some people aren't just not going to like certain modes. There's plenty of people who despise any sort of open world zombies experience, and there's plenty of people who don't even like round-based. There's a lot of new Modern Warfare Zombies fans that hate round-based, and every time they go back to play it, they just despise the idea of it. So, inevitably, when you focus on so many different modes, you're going to be taking away content from another mode. That did happen in Cold War. And obviously they had a lot of, development issues with that game, so obviously it held them back quite a bit, but they were cutting themselves thin quite a bit through all these different modes. And I think if they just scrapped Outbreak and just focused on round-based, they could have made a lot better content for that game. I think the round-based maps would have probably had more content in them. They maybe would have been more fleshed out. Hell, maybe we could have even gotten an original map instead of another, stripped out campaign location with Forsaken. Like, there definitely could have done more if they didn't focus at all on Outbreak. But at the same time, some people liked Outbreak. So yes, it did add some variety in some ways. And I do think there is a place for open world zombies in the future. I just don't want to see it take away content from the core thing that people tend to play zombies for, the thing that made it popular in the first place. If it was up to me, it would be pretty much an 80-20 split between round-based and open world zombies. The open world zombies would be 20% of the game, and the 80% would be round-based. Or perhaps get rid of open world and put it in its own separate experience, maybe like connected to Warzone as a free-to-play experience, and have it be separate from the main zombies mode. I would probably do that as well, but I just don't want it to ever be like a 50-50 thing. I do not think we should ever go, 3 months with no round-based map and it's just a bunch of Outbreak updates. I don't want to see that. Onslaught is pretty easy for them to make. I don't think that should take too much time away from round-based, so I have no issue with Onslaught, really. And then Dead Ops is always going to be fun, so I'm always okay with Dead Ops. I'm pretty sure there's not many developers that work on Dead Ops. It's like 1 or 2 guys or something. It's a couple people. It's not a lot of people that work on Dead Ops, so I'm always going to be fine with the new Dead Ops mode. I actually think they should focus more on separate game modes within the actual round-based maps themselves. I know they did a couple different things in Cold War, but most of them weren't that good. They did Cranked, which was kind of like whatever. Like, who was going to play Cranked over just playing the maps regularly? Pretty much no one, so I don't really understand the point of that. But stuff like Grief, they really need to do. I really want to see Grief return. Grief is an amazing game mode. I would love to see that return, and I think that wouldn't take too much time away from round-based, but it would be a really fun mode to play. They can do other competitive modes like a gun game. If you ever played Custom Zombies, you probably know what I'm talking about. A lot of maps have gun game modes where essentially you go in and you have to kill a certain amount of zombies with different guns, and then you switch to the next gun and you just keep going up and up and up until you get to the last gun and then you win. And they can make that a competitive mode where you play against other players and the first one to get through all the guns first wins. Like, stuff like that would be so awesome. They can do last man standing modes, kind of similar to Grief, but more of a free-for-all type thing. They could also do like specific maps that are meant to be just challenge maps. And again, Custom Zombies does this a lot. A lot of custom map makers make specific challenge maps. For example, Cheese Cube is one of the most popular challenge maps ever. Why can't Treyarch make a fun little challenge map just for the hell of it? You know what I mean? Like, not everything has to be some really integral storyline focused map. Why not just throw in a Cheese Cube? Imagine an official Treyarch Cheese Cube map. How sick would that be? I would love to see stuff like that. That is the type of variety I think they should go for, instead of just being like, okay, we're going to throw in this Warzone Zombies mode and that's going to be like 50% of the game. Because honestly, I don't think that's what a lot of fans want right now. I think there's a big community for that, but I think right now a lot of people just want to see that round-based formula come back. And I think doing little side modes like that might be a little bit better than trying to be overly ambitious with some giant open world experience that inevitably it's really hard to upkeep a mode like that and make it actually work without a lot of development time behind it. So I think maybe they should save that experience for another game, or like I said, just don't do too much with it. But then if you don't do too much with it, it's going to feel underbaked. So I don't know, maybe they just shouldn't do it altogether. Personally, I'd be fine with that if they just didn't do open world zombies for Black Ops 6. And this next hot take actually kind of relates to what we're just talking about. This one comes from Samuela258. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Instead of trying to please one side of the fan base, casual and hardcore zombies fans, by going all in on making it easy and or hard, they should instead make a hardcore game mode and a casual mode for whatever zombies map they make in the future. The hardcore mode can be like normal zombies, 3 hits down, 4 perk slots, having a starting pistol, and having a normal Easter egg, normal stuff like that. And the game should be built around the hardcore mode. Then the casual mode could be a lot easier, like Cold War with unlimited perk slots, starting with any gun, and it should cut out some of the parts of the hardcore Easter egg to appeal to the casual fans. The hardcore mode should be the mode that gives you more XP and gives you achievement unlocks. It should have this to encourage casuals to play the hardcore mode, and maybe they might like it. Game development is hard, so what I said might be too hard to implement, but if Treyarch wants to please both sides of the community, then this might be the step they gotta take. So in my video where I talked about the declining quality of zombies Easter eggs over the past couple years, this was one of my suggestions. Just straight up have it split down the middle. to where when you play a map, you have an option between playing the classic version or the more hardcore version or playing a more casual, newer version, right? And I think this would be a decent way of just allowing fans to play whatever version they want, especially if there is a pretty big incentive to playing the hardcore version. I would be fine with this. I think there's definitely other ways to go about this system, but like this would be fine by me, honestly. Just like I would definitely be playing that hardcore mode because I just prefer that stuff. I think everything that, you know, he's been mentioning there sounds better to me. I enjoy the idea of starting with, you know, just the pistol. I enjoy the idea of having, you know, a complex Easter egg that's actually somewhat difficult. I enjoy having limited perk slots as long as there's more ways to, you know, earn more perks. If the game's built around that system, then that's fine by me. And then having a casual mode on top of that where people can, you know, the game just is a bit easier for those players, that'd be fine too. Like, I really do think this could be a great system to make things work for everyone, but I personally don't think they're gonna do it. I feel like they're gonna find a different way, but we'll see. I have no idea, but I would be fine with this. Next hot take is coming from Isaac. BO4 Zombies is arguably one of the most casual zombies experiences. If I want to just hop into a game and fly through rounds and not to worry too much about progressing through quests and upgrading everything in my loadout, I can do that in BO4. Sure, it's overpowered to have certain perks plus Wraithfire plus Specialist plus Elixirs, but that just means I can get into the action a lot faster. Sure, there are quests I can do if I wish, but I don't need to do any of that to have a good time in BO4. I've had many games of 9 or Resident Evil where I just hop in and kill zombies with my overpowered gear. A lot of people complain about it being overpowered, but who's to say that it isn't fun? So yeah, I basically just said this, like, I think Black Ops 4 has a lot of casual friendly maps and experiences. I don't think, you know, the inclusion of Easter eggs makes it suddenly not casual friendly anymore because you simply don't have to do the Easter eggs. You can easily hop into these maps, have a good time, and not worry about anything else. Definitely agree 100%. Next hot take is coming from Skeptics. Definitely go check out this man's videos. He got great videos. MWZ broke the community's brain for a bit as there were a ton of people who thought that it was the next evolution for zombies when it was merely a turd on the bottom of our collective boot. So I haven't made my full MWZ review yet, but if you guys have watched any of my live streams or any of my prior videos where I've mentioned MWZ, I kind of agree that, you know, it's not that good of a mode. It's pretty bad. I personally haven't enjoyed it too much over the past couple months. There's so many times I wanted to love it, especially at launch. I thought there was a lot of promise there, a lot of potential, and I really thought this could have been something enjoyable. But I've started noticing so many flaws over time, and especially with the lack of updates, I just feel like this is not a well-made experience. And obviously, I'm sure it wasn't made, you know, over the course of a long period of time, so they had to rush a lot of stuff. But even just from like a game design perspective, not even just talking about the amount of content it has, I think the actual game design is just not that good. There's so many things in the game that just contradict the idea of fun and freedom. There's a lot of restrictive things, which wouldn't really sound like it makes sense in an open world zombies experience. If you're open world, you think it's going to be very freeing, but it's actually not. There's a lot of restrictive game design choices, and I think the game mode overall is just designed to waste your time. It's designed to make you play the game as much as possible with limited amount of actual depth to it, which is crazy to me how a game with not much depth can have so much time you're going to be playing it, because there's just so many things that require long grinds, whether it's an RNG grind or just a, you know, general grind, but it really feels designed to waste your time. And there's just so many issues I have with it. And yeah, a lot of people did feel like this was the next evolution for zombies, and I honestly just don't think it's going to end up sticking. I think they might try to do something like this again in the future, but I don't think the next open world experience is gonna be like this. I think they're probably gonna go more in an Outbreak direction. I do hope they go more in an Outbreak direction. Honestly, when this mode first came out, I did say it was better than Outbreak, but over time I've started to change my mind a bit, where I really think Outbreak might be a better experience just because at least it has that core, you know, round-based feel where it's like, oh, okay, new wave, you do an objective, you get to the next wave, you do another objective, you get to the next wave, and at least it's endless. You can at least play it forever. You can also play it solo. You can actually pause it and go to the bathroom. There's, you know, an Easter egg that's genuinely actually an Easter egg. It's not like the best Easter egg ever, but it's actually an Easter egg, whereas in this mode, we just have these like story missions, which they're okay, but they kind of feel out of place for a zombies experience. So personally, I haven't been the biggest fan of it, but I'm very happy for the people who are enjoying it. I think, you know, more power to you, but it's definitely not for me. And yeah, I do think there's a lot of people who think this experience is probably going to stick around longer than I think it actually will. Next hot take is coming from Thunderstruck115. And they say, most main Easter egg quests in COD Zombies are deeply flawed since the steps are completely divorced from the mechanics. The game is built around surviving and fighting against never-ending hordes of zombies, but a lot of steps are just hold the last zombie while you run around the map, holding X or square on random things, or doing some miscellaneous busy work. I think future Easter eggs should go further with what BO4 did and make challenging steps that complement the mechanics. As some examples, Ancient Evil Raw Step, 9 Infinite Specialist Weapon Step, Toggertoten Orb Escort, or Lockdowns on Dead of Night. So I kind of agree and disagree here. I do agree with the idea of certain steps in Zombies not really working well. Obviously, there's plenty of steps that don't work well. And a big part of them is, yes, there are some steps where they're very difficult to do when there's, you know, one zombie on you and you kind of have to hold the zombie to do it. And if you don't have someone to hold it for you, you have to either try to do it in between rounds or maybe use a wonder weapon that does an area effect around you so you can do it while the wonder weapon's protecting you, or you have to try to make a crawler, which not all the Zombies games allow you to easily make a crawler. So there's definitely a lot of flaws there, but I don't think the solution is to just completely remove steps like that, because although yes, Zombies is built around surviving and fighting, I do think they did introduce quite a lot of actual hunting and like puzzles, even back in Black Ops 1. Black Ops 1 had stuff like that, if we're going to be honest. So we've seen this stuff for 14 years now in Zombies, and I feel like it's a very important part to Easter eggs. Yes, majority of the Easter egg should probably be just normal fighting zombies, but I do think including some puzzles here and there is never going to be a problem. Just make sure to implement it in a way to where we can do it without zombies hitting us, so we don't have to worry about that crap. You know what I mean? Like, so I do understand what you're saying here, but I just don't think the solution is to just remove steps like that, which I kind of feel like that's what Cold War did. I mean, Cold War doesn't really have any steps where you have to hold the last zombie. I can't think of a single step in Cold War where you have to hold the last zombie. It's always just, you know, you do the next step, you go here, you go here, you go here, which a lot of people like, but personally, I think it takes away the actual thinking process that Easter eggs usually had back in Black Ops 3 and 4. And I kind of want to go back to that, and I even want them to expand on it quite a bit. Make it like a Resident Evil type game where there's lots of downtime where, you know, while you're doing an Easter egg, maybe there's a certain part of the Easter egg where zombies aren't even spawning in anymore and you're just simply doing some sort of puzzle. Like, let that actually happen. Let moments breathe in these Easter eggs. I do think the actual, you know, round-based survival should be non-stop zombies coming in. That's what Zombies has always been. But when I'm doing an Easter egg, I think it's kind of enjoyable when sometimes it slows down a little bit. Some of the best Easter egg steps in Zombies are when it slows down a bit and just kind of lets you breathe, take in the atmosphere, take in the music, you know, get to do some sort of a puzzle. Like, that is what Zombies can really turn into, and I really hope it does. So yes, I do think there should be a lot of steps that do involve lockdowns, or like you said, the escorts. Like, those steps are fun, I enjoy those. But also throw in some puzzles here or there. Just change how the puzzles are implemented. Make sure there's something you can do without forcing yourself to hold a zombie, because that's obviously pretty frustrating. Next hot take is coming from Celtic 1971. Vanguard made multiple good gameplay changes to the Cold War systems. Covenants are great, bringing more roguelike elements to the game. Upgrading perks in-game instead of out-of-game is exactly how it should work. It's just that the tiers should be more unique than just the same stat going higher. And finally, combining tiers and Pack-a-Punch levels to be more streamlined is also much better than them being separate. It would be a shame for these to be abandoned just because they were attached to a shit game. So I'm gonna be completely honest, you guys might be shocked to hear this. I kind of agree with what this person's saying. Hear me out, hear me out. Obviously, I think Vanguard is a very bad experience. I don't like a lot of the systems in Cold War as well. So this isn't like a thing where I'm like, oh my god, these systems are one of the best systems in COD history. No, I don't think that at all. But I don't really like a lot of Cold War systems either. And I do think Vanguard is very similar. I think people kind of just forget that sometimes. They have so much hatred for Vanguard zombies, you know, understandably so, that they kind of forget that the core mechanics are not that different than Cold War. If you hate Vanguard's core mechanics, I feel like it's pretty hard to love Cold War's core mechanics. They're not that different. There are some changes, and he, you know, points out the changes here, like, for example, you have Covenants, the upgrading of perks in-game instead of out of the game, and then the combining of the weapon rarities as well as Pack-a-Punch. Like, those are the only main differences, really, but for the most part, the mechanics are pretty similar. And I would say, for the most part, I do agree that some of those changes are better. I mean, I actually like upgrading perks in-game instead of having these overpowered permanent upgrade perks that just make the game so broken after you've upgraded them, which don't take that long to upgrade. I personally don't think perks should be upgradable out of the game permanently. at least easily. I mean, if it was some sort of super Easter egg reward, that's a different story, but having it be this easy thing to unlock within like the first couple games of you playing Cold War ever, I just don't think it's a good system. I think upgrading them in-game makes more sense, but I don't think Vanguard's way was the best way either. It's just, I kind of preferred it over Cold War. Like I said, I still don't really like these mechanics at all regardless. I don't think either of these games have great mechanics. For me, Black Ops 3, Infinite Warfare, those are the games that have like the best core mechanics, but I mean, if you're gonna choose Vanguard or Cold War's mechanics, I don't really think they're that different. I think people kind of over-exaggerate how bad Vanguard's core mechanics are. I think the really bad parts of Vanguard is just the way those first two maps worked, and I think a lot of people just kind of attach their hatred for Daren onto Vanguard as a whole, when in reality it was really just those two maps were just shit. And you know, a lot of the stuff surrounding the game was also shit, but the core mechanics, they're the same as Cold War pretty much. There's, again, small differences. Here's another take about Vanguard from DJAK792. Vanguard is wildly overlooked, and purely subjectively, I prefer Vanguard over Cold War, World at War, and Exo Zombies. I think in an objective way, Cold War is definitely better, and for nostalgia's sake, World at War is better, but in my opinion, Vanguard clears. Small things I like: perk system, covenant system, and an actual challenge plus good Easter egg, Shinonuma, and boss fight, the Archon. First of all, I gotta point out, and this is nothing against you, but so many people have kind of just changed the meaning of objectively over the years. I feel like everyone uses it in a very different way than what it actually means. People tend to use it in a way where they're like, oh, they can agree with that, but they have this more personal preference where they don't agree with it. So they use the word objectively in that way. But like, that's not really what that word has ever mean. Objectively really just means that it is factually can be proven. So for example, like 2 + 2, that is objectively 4. But when it comes to art, and that includes video games, you can't really say something's objectively better. I just don't think that really works. There's really no objective quality to video games. It's really all subjective at the end of the day. But I do get what you're saying. You prefer Vanguard, but you do understand that, you know, most of the mechanics of Cold War, they're just a bit better than what you think Vanguard has. And for nostalgia's sake, like you said, you prefer World at War, but you think Vanguard's just better. And I'm gonna argue with you, but obviously I disagree. I think Vanguard's one of the worst of all the Call of Duty experiences, but I do think, you know, Shinonuma and the Archon, they're decent maps in that game. I think they're definitely, honestly, on par with most Cold War's maps. So I kind of agree. I'm not going to say I disagree there with those maps, but in terms of, you know, being better than those games, no, I don't. Except for Exo Zombies. I do think Vanguard's better than Exo Zombies. I will say that. I will shout that to the rooftops. Ain't nothing going to be worse than Exo Zombies. The next hot take comes from Scores Davis. The base guns in BO3 suck and feel fake. Almost all pea shooters, not in damage, but in feel, no recoil, unrealistic gun shot audio, dumb designs, and camos make it worse. I always use weapon mods when the default weapons on a map are BO3 weapons. It's a shame they went from BO2's arsenal to BO3's futuristic fake as fuck guns. Don't even have real names like the Dingo or Draken. Like, what? So this was one that's kind of interesting because I don't really like BO3's arsenal that much as well, but not for the reasons that is mentioned in this hot take. So I think the reasons I don't like BO3's arsenal that much is because I've just played so much of it. Like, I played so much multiplayer, I played so much zombies in BO3 that after a certain point I have gotten kind of tired of those BO3 guns. So whenever I play a custom zombies map, I always am really excited if there's different guns, you know, if it's not BO3 guns. And going to different zombies modes like Infinite Warfare, even World War II, like there's a lot of fun weapon arsenals in those games. And, you know, obviously going back to World at War, BO1, BO2, I think those arsenals are great as well. And even the newer games, I mean, I don't say I love the newer games' arsenals, but like, I honestly think, yeah, BO3 probably has some of the worst arsenal of weapons we've ever seen. I think Advanced Warfare is by far the worst, but I think BO3 is kind of close to it. And again, it's not anything against the designs. I don't really agree with what was said here. I don't really think they have this, you know, bad design or anything like that. I think they look fine. I think a lot of them look really cool. I actually like the sounds of a lot of them. I love them in multiplayer. I don't mind that they're fake. I don't mind that they're futuristic. Obviously, it's a futuristic game, no shit. But like, I don't know. I think I'm just getting bored of them at this point. It's a weird thing. I kind of agree, but at the same time, I don't. You know what I mean? Like, I agree with what he's saying, don't agree with the reasons he's saying it. We have another hot take from Thunderstruck here. Personally, I would much rather have reimaginings like the BO4 Ether maps or D Machine and Cold War than straight remasters of old maps. The maps are designed for the games for which they are originally made, and all of the Chronicles maps except Moon play worse than the original counterparts, in my opinion, especially Shang and Origins. As such, I'd prefer them to make changes to make it play better with the new game's mechanics. I agree 1000%. To be honest, I would rather there be no remasters at all. Like, I honestly don't need them anymore. I absolutely hate this mentality so many people have, where they're all talking about Zombies Chronicles 2. We need Zombies Chronicles 2. Zombies Chronicles 2 is the last thing Zombies fans needs right now. Like, we don't need remasters of old maps. That's not going to suddenly make Zombies good. We need the actual game to be good at first. You know, we need the mechanics to be solid. We need that classic feel back. We need solid new maps, new story. Like, that's what we need, right? The remasters can be kind of like the cherry on top. I wouldn't mind seeing them, but that should definitely not be the priority. But in general, if we're gonna see them, yeah, I agree. I hope they're very different. I don't want to see Transit come back as Black Ops 2's Transit. That would be terrible. I want to see it reimagined. I want to see it be different. But even if a good map is remastered, like when Origins remastered to Black Ops 3, like, I would much prefer to see a very different version of that, because Origins on Black Ops 2 is still very fun and playable to this day. I have no reason to have a new version of Origins. So yeah, I always felt like Zombies Chronicles was just not that interesting. Even before it released, I remember saying, I'm not that excited for this. I was like, if I can play these maps on the old games, why do I need to play them on the new one? You know what I mean? I always felt that way. It's nice having them all there, sure, but especially when the older versions are just better for the most part, except for Moon, then like, why am I gonna bother? You know what I mean? So I kind of agree. I actually agree quite a bit, but like I said, for the most part, I'd hope we see no remasters at all. And if we do, hopefully it's just that Transit, Die Rise, and Buried reimaginings that we've been wanting for so many years. I would definitely take those. But that's it. I don't want to say anything else. If they remaster something else, fine, but it should be extra content. Do not make that like the main content or anything. And we got another hot take coming from Thunderstruck here. I think the real issue with Mega Gobblegums in BO3 isn't so much that they're overpowered, but the fact that the dashboarding exploit encourages people to rage quit, which ruins co-op lobbies. Rage quitting might have always been a thing, but it never happened as much in the other games since it wasn't incentivized. I agree 100%. I actually think this is the core issue with BO3 Mega Gobblegums, and so many people disagree because they're having too much fun with their unlimited Gobblegums, essentially. Because if you don't know this, if you dashboard in Black Ops 3, you can save your Gobblegums. I'm sure everyone knows that by now, so everyone does that. And it does kind of ruin, you know, the actual co-op lobbies, because nobody wants to stay for the full game, because once they go down, they're worried the game's going to end before they can dashboard, so they dashboard before the game actually does end, which, yeah, that's very frustrating. And even just from a solo player perspective, I think I also don't like that you can save your Gobblegums like that, because guess what? It makes it so the actual point of Gobblegums being temporary things goes away completely. Like, there's no point of getting more Gobblegums now because I have unlimited of them, essentially. So I do think that takes away from what they're meant to be. And as much as, yes, it's fun to just jump in with a bunch of Gobblegums, I also kind of like the classic feel of just playing normal zombies, and then every now and then you get a special little Perkaholic you can pop. And Perkaholics to me just don't really feel special like that anymore, because I basically have an unlimited of them. Like, yeah, of course I could refuse to dashboard, but why would I do that if nobody else is doing that? You know what I mean? Like, to me, that's just, no, I'm not going to purposely do that just to make the game more enjoyable. But I do think it would be more enjoyable if genuinely, you know, Perkaholics were like a special thing that every now and then I get to use. But for the most part, no, I'm playing the game regularly. Next hot take comes from Remarkable Zell. Perka-Colas are overrated. Players always have to play a very specific way on every map to progress through zombies. Black Ops 4 had a good idea with letting players choose how to upgrade their player in a game. However, it wasn't executed as well as it could have been. It was a great addition when it was introduced in Verrückt, but Zombies mode has had over a decade of growth. I think that the community should be willing to try a new system that isn't as pay to win as Gobblegums and doesn't make progression as linear in every game. So I actually want to do a full video talking about this specific topic, because I actually have so much to say about it, because I personally don't think the perk system in Call of Duty Zombies has ever been perfected. Not a single game has ever done it perfectly, and there's plenty of flaws with literally every system we've ever seen. So I want to go over like what could be the best way of doing it. I'm going to kind of put it in simple terms in this video just to kind of give you a tease of what I'm going to talk about in that video. But I do agree that there are big issues with the perk systems that we've had. It is very linear. You do kind of get the same perks every game. And a lot of people say that Cold War fixed that with just making it so there's no perk limit. But I disagree. It's still very linear. Regardless of you being able to purchase every perk instead of just choosing 4, you still purchase your perks in the exact same order every single game. I personally never change, especially because of the Wonder Fizz machine. I literally just go up to that machine when I have enough points and buy all the perks at once. It's the boringest thing ever. There is no actual interest in thought process behind what perks you're choosing. I'll get Juggernaut first, Stamina Up, Quick Revive, and then the rest of the perks, again, just whatever is in the Wonder Fizz machine at that time. Like, I don't really think much about it. There's not much of a thought process behind it. And yes, if you go back to old perk systems, it's kind of the same thing, just kind of differently, where yeah, you're not really thinking about it too much. You just kind of buy whatever perk you usually get. You get Juggernog, Double Tap, Speed Cola, sometimes Quick Revive if you're playing solo. If you're not playing solo, you'll probably switch that out with, you know, Stamina Up or whatever it may be, whatever the map is. And obviously there's been maps where you can earn more than 4, and that kind of changes it up a bit because it's a little bit less linear because you're choosing what perks you want to buy, but then you just kind of get random perks on top of that. So it's kind of a different system, but I don't think the solution is to just like remove perks or anything like that. I don't think that would ever be a good solution. Perks are very iconic to Call of Duty Zombies, and I do think Black Ops 4's, you know, attempt to fix it just wasn't a good solution at all. Obviously, it took away the personality of what perk machines are. So I do think there is a better way of doing it, and to be completely honest, I think the closest we've ever gotten to being a really solid perk system is actually Infinite Warfare. And let me explain, because Infinite Warfare did something that no other Zombies mode has done to the same extent. World War II kind of did it, but not exactly. And it's simply just allowing players to remove perks on the fly. If you want to remove a perk at any time that you have, you could just go up to the machine, hold X, and it removes the perk. And now you can get other perks. And this to me is awesome because it allows you to just switch between perks just as much as you want. If you want to try out different perks, if you want to, maybe you're doing a specific Easter egg step that might require that perk, or not require it, but might, like, you know, it might be encouraged to use that perk because it'll help you out a lot for that specific step. You might buy it just for that Easter egg step, but then you'll probably get rid of it right after because you don't want to keep that perk. You're not going to keep it for the rest of the game. You just wanted it for that one step. There's a great example here, actually. Black Ops 4's 9. The Ross step is actually a really good step to use Death Perception. There's pretty much no other part during that map where Death Perception is actually useful though. So that's like the one Easter egg step where actually using Death Perception helps you out quite a bit because it allows you to see zombies through the walls so you can predict where they're coming. So let's say there's a fire zombie that could explode and destroy your Ross step, then it'll ruin that run completely. But if you know exactly where that fire zombie is because you can see them through the walls, it's a lot easier to do that step and it's a lot easier to tell where the zombies are. But then you might not want it after that. But unfortunately, the way Black Ops 4 system works is you kind of stuck with that perk. You're stuck with it for the rest of the game. But if you were to have Infinite Warfare system, you can just go back to that machine, remove it, and go buy a different perk. And even if you had like Black Ops 3 system in BO4, it still wouldn't fix the problem because to remove perks in Black Ops 3, you have to down yourself. And obviously in co-op, I guess it's a bit easier because you could just go buy your perks back, but in solo, you're losing self-revives for that. Or in, you know, obviously the case of BO3, you're losing quick revives, and you don't have unlimited of those. So that doesn't really fix the problem there. So if you want to have a perk limit, so you actually have to think about what perks you have to use, I think the best system to do is what Infinite Warfare did. Let you just switch between perks. Something I personally always did in Infinite Warfare is I would get Slappy Taffy. Slappy Taffy was a perk that gave you increased melee damage, enough to give you a one-hit melee up until like round 10 or something like that. So what I would do is I would buy the perk like round 5 and just use that to one-hit the zombies till round 10. Once round 10 hits, I would get rid of Slappy Taffy and then go buy other perks. But if this was Black Ops 3 or any other Call of Duty for that matter, I probably would have never gotten Slappy Taffy in the first place because, well, what's the point? And obviously if it was a game like Cold War where there's no perk system, there wouldn't be no thought process behind using that perk versus using other perks. I'd probably just buy it and then just keep buying more perks. Like I wouldn't really think about it. I would just kind of buy it and then just go through the next perks. But in Infinite Warfare, you actually have to think and you have to go, okay, what perk might be more beneficial for me in these next moments? I have a lot more to say about this, and like I said, I'm going to do that in another video, but another minor thing I want to mention is that they should also make it so the better the perk is, the harder it should be to obtain. And I don't mean in terms of the price of the perks, but I mean in terms of like the actual location of the perk machine. And they've done this in the past. Think of a map like Mob of the Dead. Mob of the Dead is one of the only maps where I don't get Juggernog first. I actually usually get either Double Tap or Electric Cherry first, because Electric Cherry and Double Tap, they're much closer to you where you spawn. You can actually get to those perks within the first 5 to 6 rounds. Juggernog, you're probably not going to get to that location until a couple rounds, maybe like round 8 or 9 or something like that. So chances are you're not going to get there for a while anyways. You might as well get a different perk first. That placement is what actually makes the actual, deciding factor of what perk to get actually kind of interesting, because you could hold off on not buying Electric Cherry or Double Tap and just waiting until you get to Jug. So it's kind of a risk versus reward type thing where, yes, you might be safer because you're going to get Juggernog sooner, but you also are spending that time without having one of those other 2 perks that could actually help you get to Jug. something small like that makes a big difference. But Cold War kind of said fuck that and just threw in a Wonder Fizz machine where you can literally buy every single perk at one station at all times, which completely removes the actual idea of perk placement and how important that could be. So yeah, Cold War kind of just spit in the face of any interesting perk systems that they could do, in my opinion. I do like having perk upgrades. I think that's cool, but like I said, they should not be permanent. They should be in game. But that's a long tangent. I want to do it for another video, so definitely keep an eye on that one. The next hot take comes from Zachary Vortivask. Cold War is overhated. It has problems, but it fixed many of BO4's issues like the PAP system, the perk system, by removing the counterintuitive perk limit. Most of the criticism is over not being classic zombies. If you prefer classic, that's fine. I do too. But saying Cold War is a bad game is ridiculous, especially if you praise Black Ops 4 and claim that Black Ops 4 is overhated. Yeah, I got a lot to say about this one. So first of all, I don't really think it fixed a lot of those systems. I mean, yes, I think the perk system is better than Black Ops 4's perk system just by a bit, just because it doesn't have, you know, the issues that the Black Ops 4 perk system has, where you're forced to use the same 4 perks, and of course the personality of the perks were kind of stripped away. So I agree there. The PAP system, yeah, I mean, yeah, I probably prefer Cold Wars just a little bit, but I don't think it's like much better. They both still have the issue where you're spending a lot of money on Pack-a-Punch, and sometimes the actual Pack-a-Punch upgrades themselves don't feel as major as they should from each tier. So I kind of think they should just do what Infinite Warfare does, just have one Pack-a-Punch and then a double Pack-a-Punch, and that's it. That would be perfect in my opinion, but I don't know. I don't mind Cold War's PAP system. I think it's okay. And as I mentioned before, I actually kind of don't mind the perk limits. I just think there's better ways to go about it with the maps. You have to just make sure there's ways to get more than 4 perks, and then I'm fine with the perk limit. Honestly, I was always fine with it personally. You also say here that you think it's ridiculous to say that Cold War is a bad game while also praising BO4, which I personally don't get that, because I feel like the games are very different. So I feel like that would actually kind of make sense if someone praised one and hated the other. Personally, for me, I don't hate either games. I enjoy both of the games quite a bit. I definitely have a lot more issues with Cold War Zombies, as I've said in the past, but I think it's still an enjoyable game for sure. I love Black Ops 4 a lot more personally, but yeah, I can see what you're probably trying to say. The next one comes from Theos B. I hated the look of the Cold War UI at first, especially the pop-up plus 10 XP zombies killed stuff. But after playing, I realized how satisfying it is, and the dopamine you get from killing a horde of zombies is now like significantly higher. Hate that I think that, but I think they should keep it whilst giving the option for the minimal UI maybe. Okay, my voice got really monotone there because I was disappointed with this take, but no, you guys, if you see my HUD video, you know how much I despise the Cold War Zombies HUD. I think it's the worst HUD we've ever had in Zombies history, and I stand by that 1000%. I know a lot of people do like it because of the satisfying feel it gives in terms of the, you know, the bunch of numbers popping up. That's satisfying for some people, but I've mentioned 1,000 times more that I think it's more satisfying to just see the zombies getting shredded. You know what I mean? I think when you're having numbers popping up on the screen, it's what I call artificial satisfaction. It's like having sex with a robot instead of a person. You know, it's not real satisfaction. It's artificial. But I have said in the past, I am fine with them doing some sort of a system where maybe by default it's a classic HUD. I do not want the default HUD to be like Cold War at all. That would be terrible. Have it be more like Black Ops 3, very simplistic HUD, not, you know, over intrusive, any of that. But if people want the option to turn on certain things like that, you know, text on the middle of the screen, all the damage numbers and stuff, give them the option. That's fine. But they'd also have to make sure that none of those extra Cold War HUD elements are required. Like, for example, don't have it so the only way to see your points popping up on the screen is just in the middle of the screen. Like, that shouldn't be either like an on and off thing. No. Let me put it back to where it's always been in prior Zombies games, where it used to be just right next to the points and used to just show the points going up with a bunch of different pop-ups there. I want to see it in the side of the screen there, not in the middle of the screen like it is in Cold War. None of that bullshit. Show it to me where it used to be by default. I think first impressions are important, so I think having the default HUD being clean and looking good would be great for this game. I mean, there's a reason the first impressions of Black Ops 4, Cold War, and MWZ were all negative. Like, all people saw was just like 5 minutes of gameplay. I remember when Black Ops 4 gameplay leaked, especially, even Cold War gameplay leaked, people were immediately shooting it down because of what the HUD looked like, and I don't blame them. The HUD looked terrible, so I was like, yeah, of course people aren't going to be happy about it, but they let that get to them so much that they were almost unwilling to try out the game. And people eventually did, and they liked them. You know, I understand that you can still enjoy a game even if you don't like the HUD. I love Black Ops 4 and I hate the HUD, so of course you can. But those first impressions are definitely important. So I think they definitely need a classic, you know, a traditional HUD by default. And if you want to add some of the stuff, fine. I don't really care. Next, we have a take from iHemerold. Alpha Omega has one of the best wonder weapons ever. Each one has unique playstyles and are fun to use, and the steps to get them are easy and simple. I agree, except for that one chimney step where you have to like throw a wraith fire into the chimney. That one's pretty terrible, but all the other steps are fine. I do enjoy them, and I agree, they're actually really fun wonder weapons. I think people give them a lot of hate because the actual look of them are pretty boring. They're just ray guns with different color schemes to them. But in terms of actual power and uniqueness, they're fun to use. I will say the abilities they have are fun. They are unique. They just look very generic because, like I said, they're just ray gun Mark IIs. But especially the unlimited ammo electric ray gun Mark II, that's probably one of the best wonder weapons ever. It's actually pretty good even into higher rounds. So yeah, I highly recommend using them. A lot of people just kind of, like I said, they shot them down just based on the look of them, but they're actually not that bad. I do agree. And the last take here is coming from Sandman 2000. Shang and Alpha Omega are better than all of BO3 except for Gorod Krovi. The challenge on both maps are fun because of their tight layouts, and the boss zombies are difficult but fun to fight against on both maps. The ray gun and baby gun are some of the coolest wonder weapons ever and can help you to round 100. The electric ray gun Mark II is a top 3 wonder weapon of all time, and the baby gun is a top 5 wonder weapon. Even though both maps are top 10, Alpha is the better map because of the side quests, lore, and the map is so much more co-op friendly than Shang. So obviously I don't agree with this overall, but there are certain elements of this I do agree with. Obviously, you know, I'm not going to say Shang and Alpha Omega are better than all of BO3 except for Gorod Krovi. I think BO3's maps are like pretty much unbeatable. Most of them are some of the best of all time. I think all 5 of the main BO3 maps are within the top like 15 best maps ever. And Shang I wouldn't even put in the top 20. So yeah, I don't think that's getting there. But Alpha Omega I think is probably like top 20, somewhere in there at least. So I don't know. I wouldn't put it better than any BO3 map though, I don't think. So I don't agree there, but I do agree with the other stuffs that are said here. Obviously, the baby gun is amazing. The ray gun Mark II variants on Alpha Omega, like I just talked about before, are really cool. They're really fun, and they're really actually pretty good. A lot of people don't give them much credit, but they are pretty good. And yeah, you have a pretty solid quest on Alpha Omega, and yeah, it's got good lore. I kind of agree with most of it. It's just that one part I don't really agree with at the top. And that is going to do it for all the hot takes in this video. I definitely plan on doing more of these if you guys keep watching them and liking the videos for sure. I would like to do some more specific ones though, maybe ones that are based around specific topics, and maybe even doing some multiplayer ones if you guys are curious, or maybe even a campaign one. I think that would be really cool as well. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below of all these different hot takes. Peace out.